everyone, I'm Liz Burrell and welcome to the Big Green Egg Grilling Show. Each week we bring you something new in the world of grilling, roasting, smoking, and baking, along with tips, tricks, and of course, great cooking segments. During each show, we'll teach you how to season or flavor your cooks, introduce you to new Big Green Egg accessories and how to use them, and we'll answer questions sent to us from our fans on various social media channels, as well as questions sent to mailbag@biggreenegg.com. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's get to today's mailbag questions. So our first question is from Mary in Atlanta, and she's actually one of my support staff, so I'm sure that this is going to be a really good question. Mary asks, is there a guide for the best practices of different style pizzas on the egg? For example, how do you cook a Chicago deep dish, or how do I get my crust really crisp for those thin pizzas? So that's a great question, Mary. Let's go ahead and start with how to correctly set up your egg to bake a pizza. We are going to start with our convector legs up, our cooking grid on top, and then your pizza stone. Now, this is our deep dish pizza and baking stone. And then we have, obviously, our full pizza and baking stone that's flat. And then we also have our half moon baking stone, which comes in a large, XL, and the 2XL. Now, after we get done with our perfect setup, I think that the best guide is honestly trial and error on this one. You really have to figure out what works best for you and what methods you enjoy the most as far as your actual dough goes, what kind of pizza you like. There's so many ways to do pizza on the egg, and everyone has their different preferences and difference in taste. So we do sell the deep dish pizza stone, so it's perfect for Chicago style pizza. And for this, it's the exact same pizza dough rolled out. You'll need the deep dish pizza and baking stone, and I would put a little flour or cornmeal or rice flour on the bottom of the stone so that the dough doesn't stick. Place your dough into the stone and start filling up your deep dish pizza. Cheese first, toppings you want, and then your pizza sauce. For a thin crust pizza, using bread flour will give you a much crispier crust. And for thin crust pizza, just make sure to roll it out much thinner than normal. If you can't find bread flour, you can substitute it with all-purpose flour, but that's going to give you a little bit of a chewier crust. So let's get on to our second question here. Second question is from Tim from Miami. When using wood chips or chunks, when do you add them to the coals? So you're going to use your egg as, roasting or smoking when you're using your wood chips or chunks. So we want to get that fire patch that's about the size of a dinner plate and start stabilizing your egg. Once you're ready to put your convector into the egg, that's when you can add your wood chips or chunks. Now, the smoke is going to be dirty at first. It's got to clean itself and clean that wood so that you can get a nice clean smoke. So wait until you see a clear blue smoke. That's when you're ready to cook. So that's it for our mailbag questions today. Let's move on to our recipe of the day. So today's recipe, we are going to make homemade pizza dough, obviously homemade pizza, and our classic pizza sauce. So let's start with our classic pizza sauce. We need to get that done first. So we're going to do 2 tablespoons extra virgin olive oil, 3 cloves of garlic minced, 1 6-ounce can tomato paste, 1 16-ounce can crushed tomatoes, a half of an onion finely minced, 10 fresh basil leaves finely chopped, a half a tablespoon dried or fresh oregano, 1 teaspoon of sugar, a teaspoon and a half of kosher salt or to taste, and a half of a teaspoon freshly ground black pepper. So let's go ahead and start. We are going to add our oil first. Now, I have been heating up our ceramic enameled Dutch oven here, so it's pretty hot. I'm going to put our olive oil in first, our garlic. Ooh, listen to that sizzle. It smells good, sounds great. I love homemade pizza sauce. Our onion. gonna give it a stir here, a little bit more oil. Now we are going to add our tomato sauce and our tomato paste. Give that a stir. Our fresh basil. About a teaspoon of our, half of a teaspoon of our pepper. And we're going to do that to taste too. Make sure you're tasting things as you go. Our oregano, our sugar, and our salt. Now we're going to let this simmer for 15 to 20 minutes or so, and then it is ready to use on our pizza. So let's go ahead and get started and work on our dough. So now we're on to our pizza dough. We're going to use 3.5 to 4 cups of bread flour, plus a little bit more for when we're going to roll our pizza dough out, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1 envelope of instant dry yeast, 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, a cup and a half of warm water, and then 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, and then 2 teaspoons of extra virgin olive oil when we let our dough rest. Now I need to pull off our warm water from our egg. And we are going to start by putting our yeast in our mixer here, and then our bread flour, our salt, sugar, and some of our olive oil, just a little bit. Now we are going to start mixing, and as we're mixing, we're going to slowly add our warm water to our dough. Now you want to do this slowly because you want it to mix as evenly as possible. Now if it's too sticky, add a little bit more flour. If it's too dry, add a little bit more water. Now we're going to add a little bit more olive oil to our mix here. Now you're waiting for it to form into a ball of dough. And there we go, it's starting to form a little bit. It's looking good. Now it's a little bit sticky, so I'm going to add just a little bit more bread flour here. Not much. All right, so let's pull it off here. Beautiful dough. Now this is going to make about enough dough for 2 pizzas. So we're just going to get it on our little bread flour here and knead it. Get all that gluten activated. Now we're going to want to roll it into a pretty smooth ball. And it is going to rest for at least an hour. This is actually a very fast dough. So we want to knead it, and then we're going to let it rest for an hour. Want it to be in a smooth kind of ball, and you can kind of start to play with it, move it into a cute little ball here. Look how pretty that is. It's like a little pizza dough package. I just love it. Now we're going to take the last remaining bit of our olive oil and put it in the bottom of our bowl here, coat it. And we're going to take our cute little pizza dough package, put it right in the bowl, and we're going to let it rest for at least an hour before we use it, or you can leave it in the fridge for 24 hours, and then make sure to let it proof for at least an hour before you use it. So today's recipe, we're going to be using 1/2 of our pizza dough that we proofed overnight. We did this covered in the fridge for 24 hours. Now it's also been sitting out for about an hour before we are using it now. So our recipe, we're going to be using 2 large spoonfuls of our homemade pizza sauce, 8 1/4 inch slices of fresh mozzarella cheese, a half cup of shredded mozzarella, 1 cup sliced mushrooms, 10 fresh leaves of basil whole, 2 tablespoons of minced garlic, 1 tablespoon for sprinkling and 1 for our garlic butter, 2 tablespoons of melted butter with the 1 extra tablespoon of minced garlic from before, 1 tablespoon of flour, 1/2 of a tablespoon cornmeal, and a 1/4 cup of Parmesan for sprinkling once our pizza is cooked. So let's go ahead and pull our beautiful dough out here and be kind of gentle with it because we do want some of those air bubbles. We're going to take our ultimate pizza cutter and just cut it straight in half here. And we're going to reserve the other piece for later. So let's sprinkle some of our extra bread flour here. And we're just going to knead it a little bit. Get it into the shape you want. And we're going to take our roller here and just start working our dough until we get it to the size that we want. Now, if your dough is sticking to the roller, you can add some more flour to your roller. And you're going to get some bubbles in here too. I personally like the bubbles. I think they add a lot of texture. So the mat that I have here actually has our pizza dough recipe on it. And it gives you kind of the sizing of your different pizzas. So there's 8 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches, 14 inches, and 16 inches. So while I'm rolling this out, everybody, don't worry about it being perfectly round. You know, to me, the best pizzas aren't perfectly round. And I grew up in Belgium, and they've got some really good Italian influence over there, and the pizzas were never round. They came out completely homemade, different shapes and sizes. And I just, there's something about knowing that it was made with love in a kitchen somewhere. It just may not be, you know, round. It could be heart-shaped. It could be, like it just did, could be all sorts of shapes. It's still going to taste the same. So now we've got a pretty good size on our pizza here and a good texture. So we're going to move it over to the side. Going to get our pizza peel with parchment paper, and we are going to add just a little bit of cornmeal to our parchment paper. Now I'm using parchment paper because it helps not to stick to the pizza stone. We're going to remove it after about 5 to 7 minutes. And if you like the texture of cornmeal, up to you. I'm not a huge fan of it. If you really don't like it, you could use rice flour in place of it. Now, we're going to start topping our pizza. We want to do this pretty fast once we've put the sauce on our pizza, because otherwise it's going to make the middle of your dough really gummy and chewy. So we're going to take 2 big spoonfuls here of our homemade pizza sauce, and I'm going to leave about 1 inch around the edges for our crust. Now the amount of sauce is also up to you. If you mess up a little bit, it's okay. It's still going to be delicious. I'm going to go ahead and add my mushrooms on the bottom because I want the cheese to hold the toppings onto our pizza, and I also don't want our mushrooms to burn on the top. I'm going to add some fresh basil. That's where our whole leaves kind of come in. Place them pretty all around. And I love basil. It just reminds me, it's so fresh and springy. Now, I'm going to add a little bit of fresh minced garlic here. A lot. And now I have these beautiful mozzarella slices. So we're just going to place those all around our beautiful, fresh, homemade pizza. And it's just going to be a great, refreshing, high-carb dinner later. So I'm going to take a little bit of our shredded mozzarella here, put it on the top. Now, if you don't want to use this recipe, you don't like garlic or basil or what have you, you can do any pizza you want on the egg. You can do pulled pork pizza, which tastes like a pulled pork sandwich. You could do barbecue chicken pizza. You could do pepperoni pizza. You can literally do any pizza that you want to do. It's just up to you and your preference. So let's go ahead and get our pizza on our big green egg. We are going to slide it onto our pizza stone. So we are going to let this cook for 5 to 7 minutes, and then we're going to pull the parchment paper out from underneath. Let's go ahead and get to our tips from the experts. So today's tips from the experts, we're going to be talking about the big green egg convector and pizza and baking stones. So over time, they acquire a natural patina, and that's a mark of their effectiveness and continued use. So you can see that my convector here has a pretty dark color, and my deep dish pizza and baking stone does not, because it's brand new. But there's nothing wrong with the color of this convector. It actually means that it's in pretty good shape. So for regular care, once the convector and pizza and baking stones have cooled off completely, scrape off any baked on food with a stiff dry brush or a plastic scraper, wipe with a damp cloth, and over time, the convector and pizza baking stones will darken and possibly show stains. This is normal and will not affect the flavor of your food. Please do not soak these in water or put in the dishwasher. To protect the convector and for an easy cleanup, you can also wrap it in aluminum foil or use one of our aluminum drip pans to catch the drippings from your cook. So they're pretty easy to take care of, and this is actually, they're made out of the same porous ceramic that your egg is. So just like you don't want to use chemicals in the egg, you don't want to use chemical on your baking stones or your convector. So now let's go ahead and jump in and check on our pizza and see if we're ready to pull the paper out from underneath. Now make sure you use some heat gloves here. Oh yeah, we're perfect. Paper might rip off a little bit, that's fine. Awesome. That was beautiful. Now we're gonna put our garlic butter on as well. And we are just gonna take this and brush the edges of our gorgeous homemade pizza. We'll give it a little drizzle on top too. Why not? All right, so we're gonna let that cook for another few minutes, and then we're gonna pull it off, give it a nice slice, and see how it turned out. So this is our finished product. As you can see, it's pretty solid. It cooked really, really nicely. And now there's another little detail before we cut into this that I wanted to mention. This dough has sugar in it, so you want to cook this kind of dough at a lower temperature, between 425 to 450 degrees. If your dough doesn't have sugar in it, that's when you can bump up the temperature, to 550, maybe 600 degrees. But there's never any reason to cook pizza any higher than that. So our beautiful pizza, we are going to garnish with some fresh basil. And just tear it up, make it look really homemade. No need to chop it. Man, is it beautiful. Smells great too, it's extra cheesy. Now we're going to garnish with a little bit of Parmesan cheese, because you can't go wrong with more cheese. And then we're going to use our ultimate pizza cutter here. And it's got a very trusty little safety guard that clips in. And we're just going to run straight through it. And I just want this little guy here. Ooh, it's gorgeous. It's really good. The crust cooked perfectly. It's got a crunch. It's fresh tasting. Y'all really need to try pizza on the egg at home. Knocks it out of the ballpark. I really hope that you guys enjoyed tuning in with me today, and I hope that I inspired you to try something new and different on your big green egg. And if you're not an egger yet, head to biggreenegg.com, where we make purchasing online easy with home delivery by a dealer in your community. I'm Liz Burrell. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time when I've got something special in store for you.
There's a place where fire and flavor are celebrated. Grill it, roast it, smoke it, or bake it. It's the most versatile grill you'll ever own. Have it delivered to your door by a certified dealer in your community and start enjoying the ultimate cooking experience. Visit BigGreenEgg.com.